Harold's Pilgrimage, by George Gordon Lord Byron. To Ianthe. Not in those climes where I have late been straying, though beauty long hath there been matchless deemed, not in those visions to the heart displaying Forms which it sighs but to have only dreamed, hath aught like thee in truth or fancy seemed. Nor, having seen thee, shall I vainly seek to paint those charms which varied as they beamed. To such as see thee not, my words were weak. To those who gaze on thee, what language could they speak? Ah, mayst thou ever be what now thou art, nor unbeseem the promise of thy spring, as fair in form, as warm yet pure in heart, Love's image upon earth without his wing, and guileless beyond hope's imagining. And surely she who now so fondly rears thy youth in thee, thus hourly brightening, beholds the rainbow of her future years, before whose heavenly hues all sorrow disappears. Young Peri of the West, 'tis well for me, my years already doubly number thine. My loveless eye unmoved may gaze on thee, and safely view thy ripening beauties shine. Happy I ne'er shall see them in decline; happier, that while all younger hearts shall bleed, mine shall escape the doom thine eyes assign to those whose admiration shall succeed, but mixed with pangs to love's even loveliest hours decreed. Oh, let that eye, which wild as the gazelle's, now brightly bold or beautifully shy, wins as it wanders, dazzles where it dwells, glance o'er this page, nor to my verse deny that smile for which my breast might vainly sigh, could I to thee be ever more than friend. This much, dear maid, accord, nor question why, to one so young my strain I would commend, but bid me with my wreath one matchless lily blend. Such is thy name with this my verse entwined, and long as kinder eyes a look shall cast On Harold's page, Ianthe's here enshrined shall thus be first beheld, forgotten last. My days once numbered, should this homage past Attract thy fairy fingers near the lyre Of him who hailed thee, loveliest as thou wast, such is the most my memory may desire, though more than hope can claim, could friendship less require. End of To Ianthe. So the first. 1. O thou, in Hellas deemed of heavenly birth, Muse, formed or fabled at the minstrel's will, since shamed full oft by later lyres on earth, mine dares not call thee from thy sacred hill, yet there I've wandered by thy vaunted rill. Yes, sighed o'er Delphi's long deserted shrine, Where, save that feeble fountain, all is still, Nor mote my shell awake the weary Nine To grace so plain a tale, this lowly lay of mine. 2. Whilome in Albion's isle there dwelt a youth, Who ne in virtue's ways did take delight, But spent his days in riot most uncouth, And vexed with mirth the drowsy ear of night. Ah me, in sooth he was a shameless wight, Sore given to revel and ungodly glee. Few earthly things found favour in his sight, Save concubines and carnal company, And flaunting wassailers of high and low degree. 3. Childe Harold was he hight, but whence his name and lineage long it suits me not to say. Suffice it that perchance they were of fame, and had been glorious in another day. But one sad losel soils a name for aye, however mighty in the olden time. Nor all that heralds rake from coffined clay, nor florid prose, nor honeyed lines of rhyme, can blazon evil deeds, or consecrate a crime. 4. Childe Harold basked him in the noontide sun, disporting there like any other fly, nor deemed before his little day was done one blast might chill him into misery. But long ere scarce a third of his passed by, worse than adversity the child befell. He felt the fullness of satiety, then loathed he in his native land to dwell, which seemed to him more lone than Eremet's sad cell. 5. For he through sin's long labyrinth had run, Nor made atonement when he did amiss, Had sighed to many, though he loved but one, and that loved one, alas, could ne'er be his. Ah, happy she, to 'scape from him whose kiss had been pollution unto aught so chaste, who soon had left her charms for vulgar bliss, and spoiled her goodly lands to gild his waste, nor calm domestic peace had ever deigned to taste. 6. And now Childe Harold was sore sick at heart, and from his fellow bacchanals would flee. 'Tis said, at times the sullen tear would start, but pride congealed the drop within his ee. Apart he stalked in joyless reverie, and from his native land resolved to go, and visit scorching climes beyond the sea. With pleasure drugged, he almost longed for woe, and e'en for change of scene would seek the shades below. 7. The child departed from his father's hall. It was a vast and venerable pile, so old it seemed only not to fall, yet strength was pillared in each massy aisle. Monastic dome, condemned to uses vile, where superstition once had made her den, now Paphian girls were known to sing and smile, and monks might deem their time was come again, if ancient tales say true, nor wrong these holy men. 8. Yet oft-times in his maddest mirthful mood, strange pangs would flash along Childe Harold's brow, as if the memory of some deadly feud or disappointed passion lurked below. But this none knew, nor haply cared to know, for his was not that open, artless soul that feels relief by bidding sorrow flow, nor sought he friend to counsel or condole, whate'er this grief mote be, which he could not control. 9. And none did love him, though to hall and bower he gathered revellers from far and near, he knew them flatterers of the festal hour, the heartless parasites of present cheer. Yea, none did love him, not his lemans dear, but pomp and power alone are woman's care, and where these are light, Eros finds a fear. Maidens, like moths, are ever caught by glare, and Mammon wins his way where seraphs might despair. 10. Childe Harold had a mother, not forgot, though parting from that mother he did shun, a sister whom he loved, but saw her not before his weary pilgrimage begun. If friends he had, he bade adieu to Cintra's mountain greets them on their way, and Tagus dashing onward to the deep, his fabled golden tribute bent to pay, and soon on board the Lusian pilots leap, and steer twixt fertile shores where yet few rustics reap. 15. O Christ, it is a goodly sight to see What heaven hath done for this delicious land, what fruits of fragrance blush on every tree, what goodly prospects o'er the hills expand. But man would mar them with an impious hand, and when the Almighty lifts his fiercest scourge 'gainst those who most transgress his high command, with treble vengeance will his hot shafts urge Gaul's locust host, and earth from fellest foemen purge. 16. What beauties doth Lisboa first unfold! Her image floating on that noble tide, which poets vainly pave with sands of gold, but now whereon 1,000 keels did ride, of mighty strength, since Albion was allied, and to the Lusians did her aid afford a nation swoln with ignorance and pride, who lick, yet loathe, the hand that waves the sword, to save them from the wrath of Gaul's unsparing lord. 17. But whoso entereth within this town, that, sheening far, celestial seems to be, disconsolate will wander up and down, mid many things unsightly to strange ee. For hut and palace show like filthily. The dingy denizens are reared in dirt. No personage of high or mean degree doth care for cleanness of surtout or shirt, though shent with Egypt's plague, unkempt, unwashed, unhurt. 18. Poor paltry slaves, yet born midst noblest scenes! Why, Nature, waste thy wonders on such men? Lo, Cintra's glorious Eden intervenes In variegated maze of mount and glen. Ah me! what hand can pencil guide, or pen, To follow half on which the eye dilates Through views more dazzling unto mortal ken Than those whereof such things the bard relates, Who to the awe-struck world unlocked Elysium's gates? 19. The horrid crags by toppling convent crowned, the cork trees hoar that clothe the shaggy steep, the mountain moss by scorching skies embrowned, the sunken glen whose sunless shrubs must weep, the tender azure of the unruffled deep, the orange tints that gild the greenest bough, the torrents that from cliff to valley leap, the vine on high, the willow branch below, mixed in one mighty scene with varied beauty glow. 20. Then slowly climb the many winding way, and frequent turn to linger as you go. From loftier rocks new loveliness survey, and rest ye at Our Lady's house of woe, where frugal monks their little relics show, and sundry legends to the stranger tell. Here impious men have punished been, and lo, deep in yon cave Honorius long did dwell, in hope to merit heaven by making earth a hell. 21. And here and there, as up the crags you spring, mark many rude carved crosses near the path, yet deem not these devotion's offering, these are memorials frail of murderous wrath. For wheresoe'er the shrieking victim hath poured forth his blood beneath the assassin's knife, some hand erects a cross of mouldering lath, and grove and glen with thousand such are rife throughout this purple land, where law secures not life. 22. On sloping mounds, or in the vale beneath, are domes where whilom kings did make repair, but now the wild flowers round them only breathe, yet ruined splendour still is lingering there, and yonder towers the prince's palace fair. There thou, too, Vathek, England's wealthiest son, once formed thy paradise, as not aware when wanton wealth her mightiest deeds hath done, meek peace voluptuous lures was ever wont to shun. 23. Here didst thou dwell, here schemes of pleasure plan, beneath yon mountain's ever beauteous brow, but now, as if a thing unblessed by man, thy fairy dwelling is as lone as thou. Here giant weeds a passage scarce allow to halls deserted, portals gaping wide. Fresh lessons to the thinking bosom, how vain are the pleasaunces on earth supplied, swept into wrecks anon by time's ungentle tide. 24. Behold the hall where chiefs were late convened, O dome displeasing unto British eye, with diadem hight foolscap, lo, a fiend, a little fiend that scoffs incessantly, there sits in parchment robe arrayed, and by his side is hung a seal and sable scroll, where blazoned glare names known to chivalry, and sundry signatures adorn the roll, whereat the urchin points and laughs with all his soul. 25. Convention is the dwarfish demon styled that foiled the knights in Marialva's dome. Of brains, if brains they had, he them beguiled, and turned a nation's shallow joy to gloom. Here folly dashed to earth the victor's plume, and policy regained what arms had lost. For chiefs like ours in vain may laurels bloom. Woe to the conquering, not the conquered host, since baffled triumph droops on Lusitania's coast. 26. And ever since that martial synod met, Britannia sickens, Cintra, at thy name, and folks in office at the mention fret, and fain would blush, if blush they could, for shame. How will posterity the deed proclaim? Will not our own and fellow nations sneer, to view these champions cheated of their fame, by foes in fight o'erthrown, yet victors here, where scorn her finger points through many a coming year? 27. So deemed the child, as o'er the mountains he did take his way in solitary guise. Sweet was the scene, yet soon he thought to flee, more restless than the swallow in the skies. Though here a while he learned to moralize, for meditation fixed at times on him, and conscious reason whispered to despise his early youth misspent in maddest whim. But as he gazed on truth, his aching eyes grew dim. 28. To horse, he quits, forever quits a scene of peace, though soothing to his soul. Again he rouses from his moping fits, but seeks not now the harlot and the bowl. Onward he flies, nor fixed as yet the goal where he shall rest him on his pilgrimage, and o'er him many changing scenes must roll, ere toil his thirst for travel can assuage, or he shall calm his breast, or learn experience sage. 29. Yet Mafra shall one moment claim delay, where dwelt of yore the Lusians' luckless queen, and church and court did mingle their array, and mass and revel were alternate seen. Lordlings and freres ill-sorted fry, I ween. But here the Babylonian whore had built a dome where flaunts she in such glorious sheen, that men forget the blood which she hath spilt, and bow the knee to pomp that loves to garnish guilt. 30. O'er vales that teem with fruits, romantic hills, oh, that such hills upheld a freeborn race, whereon to gaze the eye with joyance fills, Childe Harold wends through many a pleasant place, though sluggards deem it but a foolish chase, and marvel men should quit their easy chair, the toilsome way, and long, long league to trace. Oh, there is sweetness in the mountain air, and life, that bloated ease can never hope to share. 31. More bleak to view the hills at length recede, and less luxuriant smoother vales extend. Immense horizon-bounded plains succeed, far as the eye discerns, without an end. Spain's realms appear, whereon her shepherds tend flocks, whose rich fleece right well the trader knows. Now must the pastor's arm his lambs defend, for Spain is compassed by unyielding foes, and all must shield their all, or share subjection's woes. 32. Where Lusitania and her sister meet, deem ye what bounds the rival realms divide? Or ere the jealous queens of nations greet, doth Tayo interpose his mighty tide? Or dark Sierras rise in craggy pride? Or fence of art, like China's vasty wall? Ne barrier wall, ne river deep and wide, ne horrid crags, nor mountains dark and tall, rise like the rocks that part Hispania's land from Gaul. 33. But these between a silver streamlet glides, and scarce a name distinguisheth the brook, though rival kingdoms press its verdant sides. Here leans the idle shepherd on his crook, and vacant on the rippling waves doth look, that peaceful still twixt bitterest foemen flow, for proud each peasant as the noblest duke. Well doth the Spanish hind the difference know twixt him and Lusian slave, the lowest of the low. 34. But ere the mingling bounds have far been passed, dark Guadiana rolls his power along, in sullen billows, murmuring and vast, so noted ancient roundelays among. Whilome upon his banks did legions throng of Moor and knight, in mailed splendour dressed. Here ceased the swift their race, here sunk the strong, the Paynim turban and the Christian crest, mixed on the bleeding stream, by floating hosts oppressed. 35. O lovely Spain, renowned romantic land, where is that standard which Pelagio bore, when Carver's traitor sire first called the band that dyed thy mountain streams with Gothic gore? Where are those bloody banners which of yore waved o'er thy sons, victorious to the gale, and drove at last the spoilers to their shore? Red gleamed the cross, and waned the crescent pale, while Afric's echoes thrilled with Moorish matrons' wail. 36. Teems not each ditty with the glorious tale? Ah, such, alas, the hero's amplest fate! When granite moulders and when records fail, a peasant's plaint prolongs his dubious date. Pride, bend thine eye from heaven to thine estate, see how the mighty shrink into a song. Can volume, pillar, pile preserve thee great? Or must thou trust tradition's simple tongue, when flattery sleeps with thee and history does thee wrong? 37. Awake, ye sons of Spain, awake, advance, lo, chivalry, your ancient goddess cries, but wields not, as of old, her thirsty lance, nor shakes her crimson plumage in the skies. Now on the smoke of blazing bolts she flies, and speaks in thunder through yon engine's roar. In every peal she calls, awake, arise. Say, is her voice more feeble than of yore, when her war song was heard on Andalusia's shore? 38. Hark, heard you not those hoofs of dreadful note? Sounds not the clang of conflict on the heath? Saw ye not whom the reeking sabre smote? Nor saved your brethren ere they sank beneath tyrants and tyrants' slaves? The fires of death, the bale fires flash on high. From rock to rock, each volley tells that thousands cease to breathe. Death rides upon the sulphury Siroc. Red battle stamps his foot, and nations feel the shock. 39. Lo, where the giant on the mountain stands, his blood-red tresses deepening in the sun, with death-shot glowing in his fiery hands, and eye that scorcheth all it glares upon. Restless it rolls, now fixed, and now anon flashing afar, and at his iron feet destruction cowers, to mark what deeds are done. For on this morn 3 potent nations meet, to shed before his shrine the blood he deems most sweet. 40. By heaven, it is a splendid sight to see, for one who hath no friend, no brother there, their rival scarfs of mixed embroidery, their various arms that glitter in the air. What gallant war-hounds rouse them from their lair, and gnash their fangs, loud yelling for the prey. All join the chase, but few the triumph share. The grave shall bear the chiefest prize away, and havoc scarce for joy can cumber their array. 41. 3 hosts combine to offer sacrifice. 3 tongues prefer strange orisons on high. 3 gaudy standards flout the pale blue skies. The shouts are France, Spain, Albion, victory! The foe, the victim, and the fond ally, that fights for all but ever fights in vain, are met, as if at home they could not die, to feed the crow on Talavera's plain, and fertilise the fields that each pretends to gain. 42. There shall they rot, ambition's honoured fools. Yes, honour decks the turf that wraps their clay. Vain sophistry, in these behold the tools, the broken tools, that tyrants cast away by myriads when they dare to pave their way with human hearts, to what? A dream alone. Can despots compass aught that hails their sway? Or call with truth one span of earth their own? Save that wherein at last they crumble bone by bone. 43. O Albuera, glorious field of grief! As o'er thy plain the pilgrim pricked his steed, who could foresee thee, in a space so brief, a scene where mingling foes should boast and bleed? Peace to the perished! May the warrior's meed and tears of triumph their reward prolong! Till others fall where other chieftains lead, thy name shall circle round the gaping throng, and shine in worthless lays, the theme of transient song. 44. Enough of battle's minions, let them play their game of lives, and barter breath for fame. Fame that will scarce reanimate their clay, though thousands fall to deck some single name. In sooth, 'twere sad to thwart their noble aim, who strike, blessed hirelings, for their country's good, and die that living might have proved her shame. Perished, perchance, in some domestic feud, or in a narrower sphere wild rapine's path pursued. 45. Full swiftly Harold wends his lonely way, where proud Sevilla triumphs unsubdued. Yet is she free, the spoiler's wished-for prey. Soon, soon shall conquest's fiery foot intrude, blackening her lovely domes with traces rude. Inevitable hour, 'gainst fate to strive, where desolation plants her famished brood, is vain, or Ilion, Tyre, might yet survive, and virtue vanquish all, and murder cease to thrive. 46. But all unconscious of the coming doom, the feast, the song, the revel here abounds. Strange modes of merriment the hours consume, nor bleed these patriots with their country's wounds, nor hear war's clarion, but love's rebeck sounds. Here folly still his votaries enthralls, and young-eyed lewdness walks her midnight rounds. Girt with the silent crimes of capitals, still to the last kind vice clings to the tottering walls. 47. Not so the rustic. With his trembling mate he lurks, nor casts his heavy eye afar, lest he should view his vineyard desolate, blasted below the dun hot breath of war. No more beneath soft eve's consenting star Fandango twirls his jocund castanet. Ah, monarchs, could ye taste the mirth ye mar, not in the toils of glory would ye fret. The hoarse dull drum would sleep, and man be happy yet. 48. How carols now the lusty muleteer? Of love, romance, devotion is his lay. As whilom he was wont the leagues to cheer, his quick bells wildly jingling on the way. No, as he speeds, he chants Vive el Rey, and checks his song to execrate Godoy, the royal wittol Charles, and curse the day when first Spain's queen beheld the black-eyed boy, and gore-faced treason sprung from her adulterate joy. 49. On yon long level plain, at distance crowned with crags whereon those Moorish turrets rest, wide scattered hoof-marks dint the wounded ground, and scathed by fire, the greensward's darkened vest tells that the foe was Andalusia's guest. Here was the camp, the watch-flame, and the host. Here the brave peasant stormed the dragon's nest. Still does he mark it with triumphant boast, and points to yonder cliffs, which oft were won and lost. 50. And whomsoe'er along the path you meet Bears in his cap the badge of crimson hue, Which tells you whom to shun and whom to greet. Woe to the man that walks in public view, without of loyalty this token true. Sharp is the knife, and sudden is the stroke, and sorely would the Gallic foeman rue, if subtle poniards, wrapped beneath the cloak, could blunt the sabre's edge, or clear the cannon's smoke. 51. At every turn Morena's dusky height sustains aloft the battery's iron load, and far as mortal eye can compass sight, the mountain howitzer, the broken road, the bristling palisade, the fosse o'erflowed, the stationed bands, the never vacant watch, the magazine in rocky durance stowed, the holstered steed beneath the shed of thatch, the ball-piled pyramid, the ever-blazing match. 52. Portend the deeds to come, but he whose nod has tumbled feebler despots from their sway, a moment pauseth ere he lifts the rod, a little moment deigneth to delay. Soon will his legions sweep through these the way. The West must own the scourger of the world. Ah, Spain, how sad will be thy reckoning day, when soars Gaul's vulture with his wings unfurled, and thou shalt view thy sons in crowds to Hades hurled. 53. And must they fall, the young, the proud, the brave, to swell one bloated chief's unwholesome reign? No step between submission and a grave, the rise of rapine and the fall of Spain. And doth the power that man adores ordain their doom, nor heed the suppliant's appeal? Is all that desperate valour acts in vain? And counsel sage, and patriotic zeal, the veteran's skill, youth's fire, and manhood's heart of steel? 54. Is it for this the Spanish maid, aroused, hangs on the willow her unstrung guitar, and, all unsexed, the anless hath espoused, sung the loud song, and dared the deed of war? And she, whom once the semblance of a scar appalled, an owlet's larum chilled with dread, now views the column-scattering bayonet jar, the falchion flash, and o'er the yet warm dead stalks with Minerva's step where Mars might quake to tread. 55. Ye who shall marvel when you hear her tale, oh, had you known her in her softer hour, marked her black eye that mocks her coal-black veil, heard her light, lively tones in lady's bower, seen her long locks that foil the painter's power, her fairy form, with more than female grace, scarce would you deem that Saragossa's tower beheld her smile in danger's Gorgon face, thin the closed ranks, and lead in glory's fearful chase. 56. Her lover sinks, she sheds no ill-timed tear, her chief is slain, she fills his fatal post. Her fellows flee, she checks their base career, the foe retires, she heads the sallying host. Who can appease like her a lover's ghost? Who can avenge so well a leader's fall? What maid retrieve when man's flushed hope is lost? Who hang so fiercely on the flying Gaul, foiled by a woman's hand, before a battered wall? 57. Yet are Spain's maids no race of Amazons, but formed for all the witching arts of love. Though thus in arms they emulate her sons, and in the horrid phalanx dare to move, 'tis but the tender fierceness of the dove, pecking the hand that hovers o'er her mate, in softness as in firmness far above remoter females, famed for sickening prate. So the second. 1. Come, blue-eyed maid of heaven, but thou, alas, didst never yet one mortal song inspire. Goddess of wisdom, here thy temple was, and is, despite of war and wasting fire, and years that bade thy worship to expire. But worse than steel and flame and ages slow is the drear sceptre and dominion dire of men who never felt the sacred glow that thoughts of thee and thine on polished breasts bestow. 2. Ancient of days, august Athena, where are thy men of might, thy grand in soul? Gone, glimmering through the dream of things that were. First in the race that led to glory's goal, they won, and passed away. Is this the whole? A schoolboy's tale, the wonder of an hour. The warrior's weapon and the sophist's stole are sought in vain, and o'er each mouldering tower, dim with the mist of years, grey flits the shade of power. 3. Son of the morning, rise, approach you here. Come, but molest not yon defenceless urn. Look on this spot, a nation's sepulchre, abode of gods, whose shrines no longer burn. E'en gods must yield, religions take their turn. 'Twas Jove's, 'tis Mahomet's, and other creeds Will rise with other years, till man shall learn Vainly his incense soars, his victim bleeds. Poor child of doubt and death, whose hope is built on reeds. 4. Bound to the earth, he lifts his eyes to heaven. Is't not enough, unhappy thing, to know thou art? Is this a boon so kindly given, that being, thou wouldst be again and go, thou know'st not, reck'st not to what region, so on earth no more, but mingled with the skies? Still wilt thou dream on future joy and woe? Regard and weigh yon dust before it flies. That little urn saith more than 1,000 homilies. 5. Or burst the vanished hero's lofty mound, far on the solitary shore he sleeps. He fell, and falling nations mourned around, but now not one of saddening thousands weeps, nor warlike worshipper his vigil keeps where demi-gods appeared, as records tell. Remove yon skull from out the scattered heaps. Is that a temple where a god may dwell? Why, e'en the worm at last disdains her shattered cell. 6. Look on its broken arch, its ruined wall, its chambers desolate and portals foul. Yes, this was once ambition's airy hall, the dome of thought, the palace of the soul. Behold through each lack-lustre, eyeless hole, the gay recess of wisdom and of wit, and passion's hosts that never brooked control. Can all saint, sage, or sophist ever writ people this lonely tower, this tenement refit? 7. Well didst thou speak, Athena's wisest son. All that we know is, nothing can be known. Why should we shrink from what we cannot shun? Each hath its pang, but feeble sufferers groan With brain-born dreams of evil all their own. Pursue what chance or fate proclaimeth best. Peace waits us on the shores of Acheron. There no forced banquet claims the sated guest, but silence spreads the couch of ever-welcome rest. 8. Yet if, as holiest men have deemed, there be A land of souls beyond that sable shore, To shame the doctrine of the Sadducee And sophists, madly vain of dubious lore, how sweet it were in concert to adore With those who made our mortal labours light, To hear each voice we feared to hear no more! Behold each mighty shade revealed to sight, The Bactrian, Samian sage, and all who taught the right. 9. There thou, whose love and life together fled, have left me here to love and live in vain, Twined with my heart, and can I deem thee dead When busy memory flashes on my brain? Well, I will dream that we may meet again, And woo the vision to my vacant breast. If aught of young remembrance then remain, Be as it may futurity's behest, For me 'twere bliss enough to know thy spirit blest. 10. Here let me sit upon this mossy stone, The marble column's yet unshaken base. Here, son of Saturn, was thy favourite throne, Mightiest of many such, hence let me trace The latent grandeur of thy dwelling place. It may not be, nor even can fancy's eye Restore what time hath laboured to deface. Yet these proud pillars claim no passing sigh. Unmoved the Moslem sits, the light Greek carols by. 11. But who, of all the plunderers of yon fane on high, Where Pallas lingered, loath to flee, The latest relic of her ancient reign, The last, the worst, dull spoiler, who was he? Blush, Caledonia, such thy son could be. England, I joy no child he was of thine. Thy free-born men should spare what once was free, Yet they could violate each saddening shrine, And bear these altars o'er the long reluctant brine. 12. But most the modern Pict's ignoble boast, To rive what Goth and Turk and Time hath spared, Cold as the crags upon his native coast, His mind as barren and his heart as hard, is he whose head conceived, whose hand prepared, Aught to displace Athena's poor remains. Her sons too weak the sacred shrine to guard, Yet felt some portion of their mother's pains, And never knew, till then, the weight of despots' chains. 13. What, shall it e'er be said by British tongue, Albion was happy in Athena's tears? Though in thy name the slaves her bosom wrung, Tell not the deed to blushing Europe's ears. The ocean queen, the free Britannia, bears The last poor plunder from a bleeding land. Yes, she, whose generous aid her name endears, tore down those remnants with a harpy's hand, which envious eld forbore, and tyrants left to stand. 14. Where was thine aegis, Pallas, that appalled stern Alaric and havoc on their way? Where Peleus' son, whom hell in vain enthralled, his shade from Hades upon that dread day bursting to light in terrible array? What, could not Pluto spare the chief once more to scare a second robber from his prey? Idly he wandered on the Stygian shore, nor now preserved the walls he loved to shield before. 15. Cold is the heart, fair Greece, that looks on thee, nor feels as lovers o'er the dust they loved. Dull is the eye that will not weep to see thy walls defaced, thy mouldering shrines removed by British hands, which it had best behoved to guard those relics ne'er to be restored. Cursed be the hour when from their isle they roved, and once again thy hapless bosom gored, and snatched thy shrinking gods to northern climes aboard. 16. But where is Harold? Shall I then forget to urge the gloomy wanderer o'er the wave? Little recked he of all that men regret. No loved one now in feigned lament could rave, no friend the parting hand extended gave, ere the cold stranger passed to other climes. Hard is his heart whom charms may not enslave. But Harold felt not as in other times, and left without a sigh the land of war and crimes. 17. He that has sailed upon the dark blue sea has viewed at times, I ween, a full fair sight. When the fresh breeze is fair as breeze may be, the white sails set, the gallant frigate tight, masts, spires, and strand retiring to the right, the glorious main expanding o'er the bow, the convoy spread like wild swans in their flight, the dullest sailor wearing bravely now, so gaily curl the waves before each dashing prow. 18. And oh, the little warlike world within, the well-reeved guns, the netted canopy, the hoarse command, the busy humming din, when at a word the tops are manned on high. Hark to the boatswain's call, the cheering cry, while through the seaman's hand the tackle glides, or schoolboy midshipman that, standing by, strains his shrill pipe, as good or ill betides, and well the docile crew that skilful urchin guides. 19. White is the glassy deck, without a stain, where on the watch the staid lieutenant walks. Look on that part which sacred doth remain for the lone chieftain, who majestic stalks, silent and feared by all. Not oft he talks with aught beneath him, if he would preserve that strict restraint, which broken ever balks conquest and fame. But Britons rarely swerve from law, however stern, which tends their strength to nerve. 20. Blow, swiftly blow, thou keel-compelling gale, till the broad sun withdraws his lessening ray. Then must the pennant-bearer slacken sail, that lagging barks may make their lazy way. Ah, grievance sore, and listless dull delay, to waste on sluggish hulks the sweetest breeze! What leagues are lost before the dawn of day, thus loitering pensive on the willing seas, the flapping sails hauled down to halt for logs like these. 21. The moon is up, by heaven, a lovely eve, long streams of light o'er dancing waves expand. Now lads on shore may sigh, and maids believe, such be our fate when we return to land. Meantime some rude Arian's restless hand wakes the brisk harmony that sailors love. A circle there of merry listeners stand, or to some well-known measure featly move, thoughtless, as if on shore they still were free to rove. 22. Through Calpe's straits survey the steepy shore, Europe and Afric on each other gaze. Lands of the dark-eyed maid and dusky Moor, alike beheld beneath pale Hecate's blaze. How softly on the Spanish shore she plays, disclosing rock, and slope, and forest brown, distinct though darkening with her waning phase. But Mauritania's giant shadows frown, from mountain cliff to coast descending sombre down. 23. 'Tis night, when meditation bids us feel we once have loved, though love is at an end. The heart, lone mourner of its baffled zeal, though friendless now, will dream it had a friend. Who with the weight of years would wish to bend, when youth itself survives young love and joy? Alas, when mingling souls forget to blend, death hath but little left him to destroy. Ah, happy years, once more, who would not be a boy? 24. Thus bending o'er the vessel's laving side, to gaze on Dian's wave-reflected sphere, the soul forgets her schemes of hope and pride, and flies unconscious o'er each backward year. None are so desolate but something dear, dearer than self, possesses or possessed a thought, and claims the homage of a tear. A flashing pang, of which the weary breast would still, albeit in vain, the heavy heart divest. 25. To sit on rocks, to muse o'er flood and fell, to slowly trace the forest's shady scene, where things that own not man's dominion dwell, and mortal foot hath ne'er or rarely been; to climb the trackless mountain all unseen, with the wild flock that never needs a fold, alone o'er steeps and foaming falls to lean. This is not solitude, 'tis but to hold converse with nature's charms, and view her stores unrolled. 26. But midst the crowd, the hum, the shock of men, to hear, to see, to feel, and to possess, and roam along, the world's tired denizen, with none who bless us, none whom we can bless, minions of splendour shrinking from distress; none that, with kindred consciousness endued, if we were not, would seem to smile the less of all that flattered, followed, sought, and sued. This is to be alone, this is solitude. 27. More blessed the life of godly eremite, such as on lonely Athos may be seen, watching at eve upon the giant height, which looks o'er waves so blue, skies so serene, that he who there at such an hour hath been will wistful linger on that hallowed spot; then slowly tear him from the witching scene, sigh forth one wish that such had been his lot, then turn to hate a world he had almost forgot. 28. Pass we the long unvarying course, the track oft trod, that never leaves a trace behind; pass we the calm, the gale, the change, the tack, and each well-known caprice of wave and wind; pass we the joys and sorrows sailors find, cooped in their winged sea-girt citadel; the foul, the fair, the contrary, the kind, as breezes rise and fall, and billows swell, till on some jocund morn, lo, land, and all is well. 29. But not in silence pass Calypso's isles, the sister tenants of the middle deep. There for the weary still a haven smiles, though the fair goddess long has ceased to weep, and o'er her cliffs a fruitless watch to keep for him who dared prefer a mortal bride. Here too his boy essayed the dreadful leap stern Mentor urged from high to yonder tide, while thus of both bereft the nymph-queen doubly sighed. 30. Her reign is past, her gentle glory's gone, but trust not this, too easy youth, beware! A mortal sovereign holds her dangerous throne, and thou mayst find a new Calypso there. Sweet Florence, could another ever share this wayward loveless heart, it would be thine, but checked by every tie, I may not dare to cast a worthless offering at thy shrine, nor ask so dear a breast to feel one pang for mine. 31. Thus Harold deemed, as on that lady's eye he looked, and met its beam without a thought, save admiration glancing harmless by. Love kept aloof, albeit not far remote, who knew his votary often lost and caught, but knew him as his worshipper no more, and ne'er again the boy his bosom sought; since now he vainly urged him to adore, well deemed the little god his ancient sway was o'er. 32. Fair Florence found, in sooth with some amaze, one who, 'twas said, still sighed to all he saw, withstand, unmoved, the lustre of her gaze, which others hailed with real or mimic awe, their hope, their doom, their punishment, their law, all that gay beauty from her bondsman claims; and much she marvelled that a youth so raw nor felt nor feigned at least the oft-told flames, which, though sometimes they frown, yet rarely anger dames. 33. Little knew she that seeming marble heart, now masked by silence or withheld by pride, was not unskilful in the spoiler's art, and spread its snares licentious far and wide, nor from the base pursuit had turned aside, as long as aught was worthy to pursue. But Harold on such arts no more relied, and had he doted on those eyes so blue, yet never would he join the lover's whining crew. 34. Not much he kens, I ween, of woman's breast, who thinks that wanton thing is won by sighs. What careth she for hearts when once possessed? Do proper homage to thine idol's eyes, but not too humbly, or she will despise thee and thy suit, though told in moving tropes. Disguise e'en tenderness if thou art wise. Brisk confidence still best with woman copes. Pique her and soothe in turn, soon passion crowns thy hopes. 35. 'Tis an old lesson, time approves it true, and those who know it best deplore it most. When all is won that all desire to woo, the paltry prize is hardly worth the cost. Youth wasted, minds degraded, honour lost, these are thy fruits, successful passion, these. If, kindly cruel, early hope is crossed, still to the last it rankles, a disease, not to be cured when love itself forgets to please. 36. Away, nor let me loiter in my song, for we have many a mountain path to tread, and many a varied shore to sail along, by pensive sadness, not by fiction, led. Climes, fair withal as ever mortal head imagined in its little schemes of thought, or ere in new utopias were read, to teach man what he might be or he ought, if that corrupted thing could ever such be taught. 37. Dear Nature is the kindest mother still, though always changing in her aspect mild. From her bare bosom let me take my fill, her never weaned though not her favoured child. Oh, she is fairest in her features wild, where nothing polished dares pollute her path. To me by day or night she ever smiled, though I have marked her when none other hath, and sought her more, and loved her best in wrath. 38. Land of Albania, where Iskander rose, theme of the young and beacon of the wise, and he, his namesake, whose oft baffled foes shrunk from his deeds of chivalrous emprise. Land of Albania, let me bend mine eyes on thee, thou rugged nurse of savage men. The cross descends, thy minarets arise, and the pale crescent sparkles in the glen, through many a cypress grove within each city's ken. 39. Childe Harold sailed, and passed the barren spot where sad Penelope o'erlooked the wave, and onward viewed the mount, not yet forgot, the lover's refuge and the lesbian's grave. Dark Sappho! Could not verse immortal save that breast imbued with such immortal fire? Could she not live who life eternal gave? If life eternal may await the lyre, that only heaven to which earth's children may aspire. 40. 'Twas on a Grecian autumn's gentle eve, Childe Harold hailed Leucadia's cape afar. A spot he longed to see, nor cared to leave. Oft did he mark the scenes of vanished war, Actium, Lepanto, fatal Trafalgar. Mark them unmoved, for he would not delight, born beneath some remote inglorious star, in themes of bloody fray or gallant fight, but loathed the bravo's trade, and laughed at martial wight. 41. But when he saw the evening star above Leucadia's far projecting rock of woe, and hailed the last resort of fruitless love, he felt, or deemed he felt, no common glow. And as the stately vessel glided slow beneath the shadow of that ancient mount, he watched the billows' melancholy flow, and, sunk albeit in thought as he was wont, more placid seemed his eye, and smooth his pallid front. 42. Morn dawns, and with it stern Albania's hills, dark Suli's rocks, and Pindus's inland peak, robed half in mist, bedewed with snowy rills, arrayed in many a dun and purple streak, arise, and as the clouds along them break, disclose the dwelling of the mountaineer. Here roams the wolf, the eagle whets his beak, birds, beasts of prey, and wilder men appear, and gathering storms around convulse the closing year. 43. Now Harold felt himself at length alone, and bade to Christian tongues a long adieu. Now he adventured on a shore unknown, which all admire, but many dread to view. His breast was armed against fate, his wants were few. Peril he sought not, but ne'er shrank to meet. The scene was savage, but the scene was new. This made the ceaseless toil of travel sweet, beat back keen winter's blast, and welcomed summer's heat. 44. Here the red cross, for still the cross is here, though sadly scoffed at by the circumcised, forgets that pride to pampered priesthood dear, churchman and votary alike despised. Foul superstition, howsoe'er disguised, idol, saint, virgin, prophet, crescent, cross, for whatsoever symbol thou art prized, thou sacerdotal gain, but general loss. who from true worship's gold can separate thy dross? 45. Ambrasia's gulf behold, where once was lost a world for woman, lovely harmless thing. In yonder rippling bay their naval host did many a Roman chief and Asian king to doubtful conflict, certain slaughter, bring. Look where the second Caesar's trophies rose, now like the hands that reared them withering. Imperial anarchs doubling human woes. God, was thy globe ordained for such to win and lose? 46. From the dark barriers of that rugged clime, e'en to the centre of Illyria's vales, Childe Harold passed o'er many a mount sublime, through lands scarce noticed in historic tales. Yet in famed Attica such lovely dales are rarely seen, nor can fair Tempe boast a charm they know not. Loved Parnassus fails, though classic ground, and consecrated most, to match some spots that lurk within this lowering coast. 47. He passed bleak Pindus, Acherusia's lake, and left the primal city of the land, and onwards did his further journey take, to greet Albania's chief, whose dread command is lawless law, for with a bloody hand he sways a nation, turbulent and bold. Yet here and there some daring mountain band disdain his power, and from their rocky hold hurl their defiance far, nor yield unless to gold. 48. Monastic Zitza, from thy shady brow, thou small but favoured spot of holy ground, where'er we gaze, around, above, below, what rainbow tints, what magic charms are found! Rock, river, forest, mountain all abound, and bluest skies that harmonise the whole. Beneath, the distant torrent's rushing sound tells where the volumed cataract doth roll between those hanging rocks that shock yet please the soul. 49. Amidst the grove that crowns yon tufted hill, which, were it not for many a mountain nigh rising in lofty ranks, and loftier still, might well itself be deemed of dignity, the convent's white walls glisten fair on high. Here dwells the Caloyer, nor rude is he, nor niggard of his cheer, the passer-by is welcome still, nor heedless will he flee from hence, if he delight kind nature's sheen to see. 50. Here in the sultriest season let him rest, fresh is the green beneath those aged trees. Here winds of gentlest wing will fan his breast, from heaven itself he may inhale the breeze. The plain is far beneath, oh, let him seize pure pleasure while he can, the scorching ray here pierceth not, impregnate with disease. Then let his length the loitering pilgrim lay, and gaze, untired, the morn, the noon, the eve away. 51. Dusky and huge, enlarging on the sight, Nature's volcanic amphitheatre. Chimera's Alps extend from left to right. Beneath, a living valley seems to stir. Flocks play, trees wave, streams flow, the mountain fir nodding above. Behold black Acheron, once consecrated to the sepulchre. Pluto, if this be hell I look upon, close shamed Elysium's gates, my shade shall seek for none. 52. No city's towers pollute the lovely view, unseen is Yanina, though not remote. Veiled by the screen of hills, here men are few, scanty the hamlet, rare the lonely cot. But peering down each precipice, the goat browseth, and pensive o'er his scattered flock, the little shepherd in his white capote doth lean his boyish form along the rock, or in his cave awaits the tempest's short-lived shock. 53. O where, Dodona, is thine aged grove, prophetic fount, and oracle divine? What valley echoed the response of Jove? What trace remaineth of the Thunderer's shrine? All forgotten, and shall man repine that his frail bonds to fleeting life are broke? Cease, fool, the fate of gods may well be thine. Wouldst thou survive the marble or the oak, when nations, tongues, and worlds must sink beneath the stroke? 54. Epirus' bounds recede, and mountains fail. Tired of upgazing still, the wearied eye reposes gladly on as smooth a vale as ever springy clad in grassy dye. E'en on a plain no humble beauties lie, where some bold river breaks the long expanse, and woods along the banks are waving high, whose shadows in the glassy waters dance, or with the moonbeam sleep in midnight's solemn trance. 55. The sun had sunk behind vast Tomerit, The Laos wide and fierce came roaring by, the shades of wonted night were gathering yet, when down the steep banks winding wearily, Childe Harold saw, like meteors in the sky, the glittering minarets of Tepalen, whose walls o'erlook the stream, and drawing nigh, he heard the busy hum of warrior men, swelling the breeze that sighed along the lengthening glen. 56. He passed the sacred harem's silent tower, and underneath the wide o'erarching gate surveyed the dwelling of this chief of power, where all around proclaimed his high estate. Amidst no common pomp the despot sat, while busy preparation shook the court. Slaves, eunuchs, soldiers, guests, and santons wait. Within, a palace, and without a fort. Here men of every clime appear to make resort. 57. Richly caparisoned, a ready row of armoured horse, and many a warlike store, circled the wide extending court below. Above, strange groups adorned the corridor, and oft times through the area's echoing door some high-capped Tartar spurred his steed away. The Turk, the Greek, the Albanian, and the Moor here mingled in their many-hued array, while the deep war-drum's sound announced the close of day. 58. The wild Albanian kirtled to his knee, with shawl-girt head and ornamented gun, and gold-embroidered garments fair to see. The crimson-scarfed men of Macedon, the Delhi with his cap of terror on, and crooked glaive, the lively supple Greek, and swarthy Nubia's mutilated son, the bearded Turk that rarely deigns to speak, master of all around, too potent to be meek. 59. Are mixed conspicuous, some recline in groups, scanning the motley scene that varies round. There some grave Moslem to devotion stoops, and some that smoke, and some that play are found. Here the Albanian proudly treads the ground, half whispering, there the Greek is heard to prate. Hark, from the mosque the nightly solemn sound, the muezzin's call doth shake the minaret. There is no God but God, to prayer, lo, God is great. 60. Just at this season Ramazani's fast through the long day its penance did maintain. But when the lingering twilight hour was past, revel and feast assumed the rule again. Now all was bustle, and the menial train prepared and spread the plenteous board within. The vacant gallery now seemed made in vain, but from the chambers came the mingling din, as page and slave anon were passing out and in. 61. Here woman's voice is never heard, apart, and scarce permitted, guarded, veiled, to move, she yields to one her person and her heart, tamed to her cage, nor feels a wish to rove. For, not unhappy in her master's love, and joyful in a mother's gentlest cares, blest cares, all other feelings far above, herself more sweetly rears the babe she bears, who never quits the breast, no meaner passion shares. 62. In marble-paved pavilion, where a spring of living water from the centre rose, whose bubbling did a genial freshness fling, and soft voluptuous couches breathed repose, Ali reclined, a man of war and woes, yet in his lineaments ye cannot trace, while gentleness her milder radiance throws along that aged venerable face, the deeds that lurk beneath, and stain him with disgrace. 63. It is not that yon hoary lengthening beard ill suits the passions which belong to youth. Love conquers age, so Hafiz hath averred, so sings the Tayyan, and he sings in sooth. But crimes that scorn the tender voice of ruth, beseeming all men ill, but most the man, in years have marked him with a tiger's tooth. Blood follows blood, and through their mortal span in bloodier acts conclude those who with blood began. 64. Mid many things most new to ear and eye, the pilgrim rested here his weary feet. So the third. 1. Is thy face like thy mother's, my fair child? Ada, sole daughter of my house and heart. When last I saw thy young blue eyes, they smiled, and then we parted, not as now we part, but with a hope. Awaking with a start, the waters heave around me, and on high the winds lift up their voices. I depart. Whither I know not, but the hours gone by, when Albion's lessening shores could grieve or glad mine eye. 2. Once more upon the waters, yet once more, and the waves bound beneath me as a steed that knows his rider, welcome to their roar, swift be their guidance wheresoe'er it lead. Though the strained mast should quiver as a reed, and the rent canvas fluttering strew the gale, still must I on, for I am as a weed, flung from the rock, on ocean's foam, to sail where'er the surge may sweep, the tempest's breath prevail. 3. In my youth's summer I did sing of one, the wandering outlaw of his own dark mind. Again I seize the theme, then but begun, and bear it with me, as the rushing wind bears the cloud onwards. In that tale I find the furrows of long thought and dried up tears, which, ebbing, leave a sterile track behind, or which all heavily the journeying years plod the last sands of life, where not a flower appears. 4. Since my young days of passion, joy or pain, perchance my heart and harp have lost a string, and both may jar. It may be, that in vain I would essay as I have sung to sing. Yet, though a dreary strain, to this I cling, so that it wean me from the weary dream of selfish grief or gladness. So it fling forgetfulness around me, it shall seem to me, though to none else, a not ungrateful theme. 5. He who, grown aged in this world of woe, in deeds not years piercing the depths of life, so that no wonder waits him, nor below can love or sorrow, fame, ambition, strife, cut to his heart again with the keen knife of silent, sharp endurance, he can tell why thought seeks refuge in lone caves, yet rife with airy images and shapes which dwell, still unimpaired, though old, in the soul's haunted cell. 6. 'Tis to create, and in creating live, a being more intense, that we endow with form our fancy, gaining as we give the life we image, even as I do now. What am I? Nothing, but not so art thou, soul of my thought, with whom I traverse earth, invisible but gazing, as I glow, mixed with thy spirit, blended with thy birth, and feeling still with thee in my crushed feelings' dearth. 7. Yet must I think less wildly, I have thought too long and darkly, till my brain became, in its own eddy boiling and o'erwrought, a whirling gulf of fantasy and flame. And thus, untaught in youth my heart to tame, my springs of life were poisoned. 'Tis too late, yet am I changed, though still enough the same in strength to bear what time cannot abate, and feed on bitter fruits without accusing fate. 8. Something too much of this, but now 'tis past, and the spell closes with its silent seal. Long absent Harold reappears at last, he of the breast which fain no more would feel, wrung with the wounds which kill not, but ne'er heal. Yet Time, who changes all, had altered him in soul and aspect as in age, years steal fire from the mind as vigour from the limb, and life's enchanted cup but sparkles near the brim. 9. His had been quaffed too quickly, and he found the dregs were wormwood, but he filled again, and from a purer fount, on holier ground, and deemed its spring perpetual, but in vain. Still round him clung invisibly a chain which galled forever, fettering though unseen, and heavy though it clanked not, worn with pain, which pined although it spoke not, and grew keen, entering with every step he took through many a scene. 10. Secure in guarded coldness, he had mixed again in fancied safety with his kind, and deemed his spirit now so firmly fixed and sheathed with an invulnerable mind, that if no joy, no sorrow lurked behind. And he, as one, might midst the many stand unheeded, searching through the crowd to find fit speculation, such as in strange land he found in wonder-works of God and nature's hand. 11. But who can view the ripened rose, nor seek to wear it? Who can curiously behold the smoothness and the sheen of beauty's cheek, nor feel the heart can never all grow old? Who can contemplate fame through clouds unfold the star which rises o'er her steep, nor climb? Harold, once more within the vortex rolled on with the giddy circle, chasing time, yet with a nobler aim than in his youth's fond prime. 12. But soon he knew himself the most unfit of men to herd with man, with whom he held little in common, untaught to submit his thoughts to others, though his soul was quelled, in youth by his own thoughts, still uncompelled, he would not yield dominion of his mind to spirits against whom his own rebelled, proud though in desolation, which could find a life within itself to breathe without mankind. 13. Where rose the mountains, there to him were friends; where rolled the ocean, thereon was his home; where a blue sky and glowing clime extends, he had the passion and the power to roam. The desert, forest, cavern, breaker's foam, were unto him companionship, they spake a mutual language, clearer than the tome of his land's tongue, which he would oft forsake for nature's pages glassed by sunbeams on the lake. 14. Like the Chaldean, he could watch the stars, till he had peopled them with beings bright as their own beams, and earth-born jars, and human frailties were forgotten quite. Could he have kept his spirit to that flight, he had been happy, but this clay will sink, its spark immortal, envying it the light to which it mounts, as if to break the link that keeps us from yon heaven which woos us to its brink. 15. But in man's dwellings he became a thing restless and worn, and stern and wearisome, drooped as a wild-born falcon with clipped wing, to whom the boundless air alone were home. Then came his fit again, which to o'ercome, as eagerly the barred-up bird will beat his breast and beak against his wiry dome, till the blood tinge his plumage, so the heat of his impeded soul would through his bosom eat. 16. Self-exiled Harold wanders forth again, with naught of hope left, but with less of gloom. The very knowledge that he lived in vain, that all was over on this side the tomb, had made despair a smilingness assume, which, though 'twere wild, as on the plundered wreck when mariners would madly meet their doom with draughts intemperate on the sinking deck, did yet inspire a cheer which he forbore to check. 17. Stop! For thy tread is on an empire's dust, an earthquake's spoil is sepulchred below. Is the spot marked with no colossal bust, nor column trophied for triumphal show? None, but the moral's truth tells simpler so, as the ground was before, thus let it be. How that red rain hath made the harvest grow! And is this all the world has gained by thee, thou first and last of fields, king-making victory? 18. And Harold stands upon this place of skulls, the grave of France, the deadly Waterloo. How in an hour the power which gave annuls its gifts, transferring fame as fleeting too. In pride of place here last the eagle flew, then tore with bloody talon the rent plain, pierced by the shaft of banded nations through. Ambition's life and labours all were vain. He wears the shattered links of the world's broken chain. 19. Fit retribution. Gaul may champ the bit, and foam in fetters, but is earth more free? Did nations combat to make one submit, or league to teach all kings true sovereignty? What! Shall reviving thraldom again be the patched-up idol of enlightened days? Shall we, who struck the lion down, shall we pay the wolf homage, proffering lowly gaze, and servile knees to thrones? No, prove before ye praise. 20. If not, o'er one fallen despot boast no more. In vain fair cheeks were furrowed with hot tears for Europe's flowers long rooted up before the trampler of her vineyards. In vain years of death, depopulation, bondage, fears, have all been borne and broken by the accord of roused up millions. All that most endears glory is when the myrtle wreathes a sword such as Harmodius drew on Athens' tyrant lord. 21. There was a sound of revelry by night, and Belgium's capital had gathered then her beauty and her chivalry, and bright the lamps shone o'er fair women and brave men. 1,000 hearts beat happily, and when music arose with its voluptuous swell, soft eyes looked love to eyes which spake again, and all went merry as a marriage bell. But hush, hark, a deep sound strikes like a rising knell. 22. Did ye not hear it? No, 'twas but the wind, or the car rattling o'er the stony street. On with the dance! Let joy be unconfined. No sleep till morn, when youth and pleasure meet To chase the glowing hours with flying feet. But hark! that heavy sound breaks in once more, As if the clouds its echo would repeat, And nearer, clearer, deadlier than before. Arm! arm! it is the cannon's opening roar. 23. Within a windowed niche of that high hall Sat Brunswick's fated chieftain. He did hear That sound, the first amidst the festival, And caught its tone with death's prophetic ear. And when they smiled because he deemed it near, His heart more truly knew that peal too well Which stretched his father on a bloody bier, And roused the vengeance blood alone could quell. He rushed into the field, and foremost fighting, fell. 24. Ah! then and there was hurrying to and fro, And gathering tears, and tremblings of distress, And cheeks all pale, which but an hour ago Blushed at the praise of their own loveliness. And there were sudden partings, such as press The life from out young hearts, and choking sighs Which ne'er might be repeated. Who would guess If ever more should meet those mutual eyes, Since upon night so sweet such awful morn could rise? 25. And there was mounting in hot haste. The steed, the mustering squadron, and the clattering car, Went pouring forward with impetuous speed, And swiftly forming in the ranks of war. And the deep thunder peal on peal afar, And near the beat of the alarming drum Roused up the soldier ere the morning star, While thronged the citizens with terror dumb, Or whispering with white lips, "The foe! They come! They come!" 26. And wild and high the Camerons gathering rose, The war note of Lochiel, which Albin's hills Have heard, and heard too have her Saxon foes. How in the noon of night that pibroch thrills, Savage and shrill! But with the breath which fills Their mountain pipe, so fill the mountaineers With the fierce native daring which instills The stirring memory of 1,000 years, And Evan's, Donald's fame rings in each clansman's ears. 27. And Ardennes waves above them her green leaves, Dewy with nature's teardrops as they pass, Grieving, if aught inanimate e'er grieves, O'er the unreturning brave. Alas! Ere evening to be trodden like the grass, Which now beneath them, but above shall grow In its next verdure, when this fiery mass Of living valour, rolling on the foe, And burning with high hope, shall moulder cold and low. 28. Last noon beheld them full of lusty life, Last eve in beauty's circle proudly gay. The midnight brought the signal, sound of strife, The morn the marshalling in arms, the day Battle's magnificently stern array. The thunder clouds close o'er it, which when rent The earth is covered thick with other clay, Which her own clay shall cover, heaped and pent, Rider and horse, friend, foe, in one red burial blent. 29. Their praise is hymned by loftier harps than mine, Yet one I would select from that proud throng, Partly because they blend me with his line, And partly that I did his sire some wrong, And partly that bright names will hallow song. And his was of the bravest, and when showered The death bolts deadliest the thinned files along, Even where the thickest of war's tempest lowered, They reached no nobler breast than thine, young gallant Howard. 30. There have been tears and breaking hearts for thee, And mine were nothing, had I such to give. But when I stood beneath the fresh green tree, Which living waves where thou didst cease to live, And saw around me the wild field revive With fruits and fertile promise, and the spring Come forth her work of gladness to contrive, With all her reckless birds upon the wing, I turned from all she brought to those she could not bring. 31. I turned to thee, to thousands, of whom each, and one as all a ghastly gap did make In his own kind and kindred, whom to teach Forgetfulness were mercy for their sake. The archangel's trump, not glories, must awake Those whom they thirst for, though the sound of fame May for a moment soothe, it cannot slake The fever of vain longing, and the name So honoured, but assumes a stronger, bitterer claim. 32. They mourn, but smile at length, and smiling mourn. The tree will wither long before it fall. The hull drives on, though mast and sail be torn. The roof tree sinks, but moulders on the hall in massy hoariness. The ruined wall stands when its wind-worn battlements are gone. The bars survive the captive they enthrall. The day drags through, though storms keep out the sun, and thus the heart will break, yet brokenly live on. 33. E'en as a broken mirror, which the glass in every fragment multiplies, and makes 1,000 images of one that was, the same, and still the more it breaks. And thus the heart will do which not forsakes, living in shattered guise, and still, and cold, and bloodless, with its sleepless sorrow aches, yet withers on till all without is old, showing no visible sign, for such things are untold. 34. There is a very life in our despair, vitality of poison, a quick root which feeds these deadly branches, for it were as nothing did we die, but life will suit itself to sorrow's most detested fruit. Like to the apples on the Dead Sea shore, all ashes to the taste, did man compute existence by enjoyment, and count o'er such hours 'gainst years of life, say, would he name 60? 35. The psalmist numbered out the years of man, they are enough, and if thy tale be true, thou, who didst grudge him e'en that fleeting span, more than enough, thou fatal Waterloo. Millions of tongues record thee, and anew their children's lips shall echo them, and say, here, where the sword-united nations drew, our countrymen were warring on that day. And this is much, and all which will not pass away. 36. There sunk the greatest, nor the worst of men, whose spirit antithetically mixed one moment of the mightiest, and again on little objects with like firmness fixed. Extreme in all things, hadst thou been betwixt, thy throne had still been thine, or never been. For daring made thy rise as fall, thou seek'st even now to reassume the imperial mien, and shake again the world, the thunderer of the scene. 37. Conqueror and captive of the earth art thou. She trembles at thee still, and thy wild name was ne'er more bruited in men's minds than now that thou art nothing, save the jest of fame, who wooed thee once, thy vassal, and became the flatterer of thy fierceness, till thou wert a god unto thyself, nor less the same to the astounded kingdoms all inert, who deemed thee for a time whate'er thou didst assert. 38. O more or less than man, in high or low, battling with nations, flying from the field, now making monarchs' necks thy footstool, now more than thy meanest soldier taught to yield. An empire thou couldst crush, command, rebuild, but govern not thy pettiest passion, nor, however deeply in men's spirits skilled, look through thine own, nor curb the lust of war, nor learn that tempted fate will leave the loftiest star. 39. Yet well thy soul hath brooked the turning tide with that untaught innate philosophy, which, be it wisdom, coldness, or deep pride, is gall and wormwood to an enemy. When the whole host of hatred stood hard by, to watch and mock thee shrinking, thou hast smiled with a sedate and all-enduring eye. When Fortune fled her spoiled and favourite child, he stood unbowed beneath the ills upon him piled. 40. Sager than in thy fortunes, for in them ambition steeled thee on too far to show that just habitual scorn, which could contemn men and their thoughts. 'Twas wise to feel, not so to wear it ever on thy lip and brow, and spurn the instruments thou wert to use, till they were turned unto thine overthrow. 'Tis but a worthless world to win or lose, so hath it proved to thee, and all such lot who choose. 41. If like a tower upon a headland rock thou hadst been made to stand or fall alone, such scorn of man had helped to brave the shock. But men's thoughts were the steps which paved thy throne, their admiration thy best weapon shone. The part of Philip's son was thine, not then, unless aside thy purple had been thrown, like stern Diogenes to mock at men. For sceptred cynics earth were far too wide a den. XLII. But quiet to quick bosoms is a hell, and there hath been thy bane. There is a fire and motion of the soul which will not dwell in its own narrow being, but aspire beyond the fitting medium of desire; and, but once kindled, quenchless evermore, preys upon high adventure, nor can tire of aught but rest, a fever at the core, fatal to him who bears, to all who ever bore. XLIII. This makes the madmen who have made men mad by their contagion, conquerors and kings, founders of sects and systems, to whom add sophists, bards, statesmen, all unquiet things which stir too strongly the soul's secret springs, and are themselves the fools to those they fool. Envied, yet how unenviable! What stings are theirs! One breast laid open were a school, which would unteach mankind the lust to shine or rule. XLIV. Their breath is agitation, and their life a storm whereon they ride, to sink at last, and yet so nursed and bigoted to strife, that should their days, surviving perils past, melt to calm twilight, they feel overcast with sorrow and supineness, and so die; even as a flame unfed, which runs to waste with its own flickering, or a sword laid by, which eats into itself, and rusts ingloriously. XLV. He who ascends to mountain tops shall find the loftiest peaks most wrapped in clouds and snow. He who surpasses or subdues mankind must look down on the hate of those below. Though high above the sun of glory glow, and far beneath the earth and ocean spread, round him are icy rocks, and loudly blow contending tempests on his naked head, and thus reward the toils which to those summits led. XLVI. Away with these! True wisdom's world will be within its own creation, or in thine, maternal Nature, for who teems like thee, thus on the banks of thy majestic Rhine? There Harold gazes on a work divine, a blending of all beauties, streams and dells, fruit, foliage, crag, wood, cornfield, mountain, vine, and chiefless castles breathing stern farewells from grey but leafy walls, where ruin greenly dwells. XLVII. And there they stand, as stands a lofty mind, worn, but unstooping to the baser crowd, all tenantless, save to the crannying wind, or holding dark communion with the cloud. There was a day when they were young and proud, banners on high, and battles passed below, but they who fought are in a bloody shroud, and those which waved are shredless dust ere now, and the bleak battlements shall bear no future blow. XLVIII. Beneath these battlements, within those walls, Power dwelt amidst her passions; in proud state Each robber chief upheld his armed halls, Doing his evil will, nor less elate Than mightier heroes of a longer date. What want these outlaws conquerors should have But history's purchased page, to call them great? A wider space, an ornamented grave? Their hopes were not less warm, their souls were full as brave. XLIX. In their baronial feuds and single fields, what deeds of prowess unrecorded died! And love, which lent a blazon to their shields, with emblems well devised by amorous pride, through all the mail of iron hearts would glide; but still their flame was fierceness, and drew on Keen contest and destruction near allied, and many a tower for some fair mischief won, Saw the discoloured Rhine beneath its ruin run. L. But thou, exulting and abounding river, Making thy waves a blessing as they flow, Through banks whose beauty would endure for ever, Could man but leave thy bright creation so, Nor its fair promise from the surface mow With the sharp scythe of conflict, then to see Thy valley of sweet waters, were to know Earth paved like heaven, and to seem such to me, Even now what wants thy stream, that it should Lethe be. LI. 1,000 battles have assailed thy banks, But these and half their fame have passed away, And slaughter heaped on high his weltering ranks. Their very graves are gone, and what are they? Thy tide washed down the blood of yesterday, And all was stainless, and on thy clear stream Glassed with its dancing light the sunny ray. But o'er the blackened memory's blighting dream Thy waves would vainly roll, all sweeping as they seem. LII. Thus Harold inly said, and passed along, Yet not insensible to all which here Awoke the jocund birds to early song In glens which might have made e'en exile dear, Though on his brow were graven lines austere, And tranquil sternness which had ta'en the place Of feelings fiery afar, but less severe. Joy was not always absent from his face, But o'er it in such scenes would steal with transient trace. LIII. Nor was all love shut from him, though his days Of passion had consumed themselves to dust. It is in vain that we would coldly gaze On such as smile upon us, the heart must Leap kindly back to kindness, though disgust Hath weaned it from all worldlings. Thus he felt, for there was soft remembrance, and sweet trust In one fond breast, to which his own would melt, And in its tenderer hour on that his bosom dwelt. LIV. And he had learned to love, I know not why, For this in such as him seems strange of mood. The helpless looks of blooming infancy, Even in its earliest nurture, what subdued, To change like this, a mind so far imbued With scorn of man, it little boots to know. But thus it was, and though in solitude Small power the nipped affectations have to grow, In him this glowed when all beside had ceased to glow. LV. And there was one soft breast, as hath been said, Which unto his was bound by stronger ties Than the church links withal, and though unwed, That love was pure, and far above disguise, Had stood the test of mortal enmities, Still undivided, and cemented more by peril, Dreaded most in female eyes. But this was firm, and from a foreign shore Well to that heart might his these absent greetings pour. The castled crag of Drachenfels frowns o'er the wide and winding Rhine, Whose breast of waters broadly swells between the banks which bear the vine, And hills all rich with blossomed trees, and fields which promise corn and wine, And scattered cities crowning these, whose far white walls along them shine, Have strewed a scene which I should see with double joy wert thou with me. And peasant girls with deep blue eyes, and hands which offer early flowers, Walk smiling o'er this paradise. Above, the frequent feudal towers Through green leaves lift their walls of grey, And many a rock which steeply lowers, And noble arch in proud decay, Look o'er this vale of vintage bowers. But one thing want these banks of Rhine, Thy gentle hand to clasp in mine. I send the lilies given to me, Though long before thy hand thy touch, I know that they must withered be, But yet reject them not as such. For I have cherished them as dear Because they yet may meet thine eye, And guide thy soul to mine e'en here, When thou behold'st them drooping nigh, And know'st them gathered by the Rhine, And offered from my heart to thine. The river nobly foams and flows, The charm of this enchanted ground, And all its thousand turns disclose Some fresher beauty varying round. The haughtiest breast its wish might bound Through life to dwell delighted here, Nor could on earth a spot be found To nature and to me so dear, Could thy dear eyes in following mine Still sweeten more these banks of Rhine. LVI. By Koblenz, on a rise of gentle ground, There is a small and simple pyramid, Crowning the summit of the verdant mound. Beneath its base are heroes' ashes hid, Our enemies, but let not that forbid Honour to Marceau, o'er whose early tomb Tears, big tears, gushed from the rough soldier's lid, Lamenting and yet envying such a doom, Falling for France, whose rights he battled to resume. LVII. Brief, brave, and glorious was his young career, His mourners were two hosts, his friends and foes, And fitly may the stranger linger to the fourth, Part I. 1. I stood in Venice, on the Bridge of Sighs, A palace and a prison on each hand. I saw from out the wave her structures rise, As from the stroke of the enchanter's wand. 1,000 years their cloudy wings expand Around me, and a dying glory smiles O'er the far times when many a subject land Looked to the winged lion's marble piles, Where Venice sat in state, throned on her 100 isles. 2. She looks a sea Cybele, fresh from ocean, Rising with her tiara of proud towers, At airy distance, with majestic motion, A ruler of the waters and their powers. And such she was. Her daughters had their dowers From spoils of nations, and the exhaustless East Poured in her lap all gems in sparkling showers. In purple was she robed, and of her feast Monarchs partook, and deemed their dignity increased. 3. In Venice Tasso's echoes are no more, and silent rose the songless gondolier. Her palaces are crumbling to the shore, and music meets not always now the ear. Those days are gone, but beauty still is here. States fall, arts fade, but nature doth not die, nor yet forget how Venice once was dear, the pleasant place of all festivity, the revel of the earth, the mask of Italy. 4. But unto us she hath a spell beyond her name in story, and her long array of mighty shadows, whose dim forms despond above the dogeless city's vanished sway. Ours is a trophy which will not decay with the Rialto, Shylock and the Moor and Pierre cannot be swept or worn away. The keystones of the arch, though all were o'er, for us repeopled were the solitary shore. 5. The beings of the mind are not of clay. Essentially immortal, they create and multiply in us a brighter ray and more beloved existence, that which fate prohibits to dull life, in this our state of mortal bondage, by these spirits supplied, first exiles, then replaces what we hate, watering the heart whose early flowers have died, and with a fresher growth replenishing the void. 6. Such is the refuge of our youth and age, the first from hope, the last from vacancy. And this worn feeling peoples many a page, and, may be, that which grows beneath mine eye. Yet there are things whose strong reality outshines our fairy land, in shape and hues more beautiful than our fantastic sky, and the strange constellations which the Muse o'er her wild universe is skilful to diffuse. 7. I saw or dreamed of such, but let them go. They came like truth and disappeared like dreams, and whatsoe'er they were, are now but so. I could replace them if I would. Still teems my mind with many a form which aptly seems such as I sought for, and at moments found. Let these too go, for waking reason deems such overweening fantasies unsound, and other voices speak, and other sights surround. 8. I've taught me other tongues, and in strange eyes have made me not a stranger. To the mind, which is itself, no changes bring surprise. Nor is it harsh to make, nor hard to find, a country with, or without mankind. Yet was I born where men are proud to be, not without cause, and should I leave behind the inviolate island of the sage and free, and seek me out a home by a remoter sea? 9. Perhaps I loved it well, and should I lay my ashes in a soil which is not mine, my spirit shall resume it, if we may, unbodied, choose a sanctuary. I twine my hopes of being remembered in my line with my land's language, if too fond and far these aspirations in their scope incline, if my fame should be, as my fortunes are, of hasty growth and blight, and dull oblivion bar. 10. My name from out the temple where the dead are honoured by the nations, let it be, and light the laurels on a loftier head, and be the Spartan's epitaph on me. Sparta hath many a worthier son than he. Meantime I seek no sympathies, nor need. The thorns which I have reaped are of the tree I planted, they have torn me, and I bleed. I should have known what fruit would spring from such a seed. 11. The spouseless Adriatic mourns her lord, and annual marriage now no more renewed, the Bucentaur lies rotting unrestored, neglected garment of her widowhood. St. Mark yet sees his lion where he stood stand, but in mockery of his withered power, over the proud place where an emperor sued, and monarchs gazed and envied in the hour when Venice was a queen with an unequalled dower. 12. The Suabian sued, and now the Austrian reigns. An emperor tramples where an emperor knelt. Kingdoms are shrunk to provinces, and chains clank over sceptred cities, nations melt from power's high pinnacle, when they have felt the sunshine for a while, and downward go, like lauwine loosened from the mountain's belt. Oh, for 1 hour of blind old Dandolo, the octogenarian chief, Byzantium's conquering foe. 13. Before St. Mark still glow his steeds of brass, their gilded collars glittering in the sun. But is not Doria's menace come to pass? Are they not bridled? Venice, lost and won, her 1300 years of freedom done, sinks like a seaweed into whence she rose. Better be whelmed beneath the waves, and shun, even in destruction's depth, her foreign foes, from whom submission wrings an infamous repose. 14. In youth she was all glory, a new Tyre, her very byword sprung from victory, the planter of the lion, which through fire and blood she bore o'er subject earth and sea. Though making many slaves, herself still free, and Europe's bulwark 'gainst the Ottomite. Witness Troy's rival, Candia, vouch it, ye, immortal waves that saw Lepanto's fight, for ye are names no time nor tyranny can blight. 15. Statues of glass, all shivered, the long file of her dead doges are declined to dust. But where they dwelt, the vast and sumptuous pile bespeaks the pageant of their splendid trust. Their sceptre broken, and their sword in rust, have yielded to the stranger. Empty halls, thin streets, and foreign aspects, such as must too oft remind her who and what enthralls, have flung a desolate cloud o'er Venice's lovely walls. 16. When Athens' armies fell at Syracuse, and fettered thousands bore the yoke of war, redemption rose up in the Attic muse, her voice their only ransom from afar. See, as they chant the tragic hymn, the car of the o'ermastered victor stops, the reins fall from his hands, his idle scimitar starts from its belt, he rends his captive's chains, and bids him thank the bard for freedom and his strains. 17. Thus, Venice, if no stronger claim were thine, were all thy proud historic deeds forgot, thy choral memory of the bard divine, thy love of Tasso, should have cut the knot which ties thee to thy tyrants, and thy lot is shameful to the nations. Most of all, Albion, to thee, the ocean queen should not abandon ocean's children. In the fall of Venice think of thine, despite thy watery wall. 18. I loved her from my boyhood. She to me was as a fairy city of the heart, rising like water columns from the sea. Of joy the sojourn, and of wealth the mart, and Otway, Radcliffe, Schiller, Shakespeare's art, had stamped her image in me, and e'en so, although I found her thus, we did not part, perchance e'en dearer in her day of woe, than when she was a boast, a marvel, and a show. 19. I can repeople with the past, and of the present there is still for eye and thought, and meditation chastened down, enough. And more, it may be, than I hoped or sought. And of the happiest moments which were wrought within the web of my existence, some from thee, fair Venice, have their colours caught. There are some feelings time cannot benumb, nor torture shake, or mine would now be cold and dumb. 20. But from their nature will the tannin grow loftiest on loftiest and least sheltered rocks, rooted in barrenness, where naught below of soil supports them 'gainst the alpine shocks of eddying storms, yet springs the trunk and mocks the howling tempest, till its height and frame are worthy of the mountains from whose blocks of bleak grey granite into life it came, and grew a giant tree. The mind may grow the same. 21. Existence may be born, and the deep root of life and sufferance make its firm abode in bare and desolate bosoms. Mute the camel labours with the heaviest load, and the wolf dies in silence. Not bestowed, in vain, should such examples be, if they, things of ignoble or of savage mood, endure and shrink not, we of nobler clay may temper it to bear. It is but for a day. 22. All suffering doth destroy, or is destroyed even by the sufferer, and in each event ends. Some, with hope replenished and rebuoyed, return to whence they came, with like intent, and weave their web again. Some, bowed and bent, wax grey and ghastly, withering ere their time, and perish with the reed on which they leant. Some seek devotion, toil, war, good or crime, according as their souls were formed to sink or climb. 23. But ever and anon of griefs subdued there comes a token like a scorpion's sting, scarce seen, but with fresh bitterness imbued, and slight withal may be the things which bring back on the heart the weight which it would fling aside for ever. It may be a sound, a tone of music, summer's eve, or spring, a flower, the wind, the ocean, which shall wound, striking the electric chain wherewith we are darkly bound. 24. And how and why we know not, nor can trace home to its cloud this lightning of the mind, but feel the shock renewed, nor can efface the blight and blackening which it leaves behind, which out of things familiar, undesigned, when least we deem of such, calls up to view the spectres whom no exorcism can bind, the cold, the changed, perchance the dead, anew, the mourned, the loved, the lost, too many, yet how few. 25. But my soul wanders, I demand it back to meditate amongst decay, and stand a ruin amidst ruins, there to track fallen states and buried greatness, or a land which was the mightiest in its old command, and is the loveliest, and must ever be the master mould of nature's heavenly hand, wherein were cast the heroic and the free, the beautiful, the brave, the lords of earth and sea. 26. The commonwealth of kings, the men of Rome, and even since and now, fair Italy, thou art the garden of the world, the home of all art yields, and nature can decree. Even in thy desert, what is like to thee? Thy very weeds are beautiful, thy waste more rich than other climes' fertility, thy wreck a glory, and thy ruin graced with an immaculate charm which cannot be defaced. 27. The moon is up, and yet it is not night. Sunset divides the sky with her, a sea of glory streams along the alpine height of blue Friuli's mountains. Heaven is free from clouds, but of all colours seems to be, melted to one vast iris of the west, where the day joins the past eternity, while on the other hand meek Dian's crest floats through the azure air, an island of the blest. 28. A single star is at her side, and reigns with her o'er half the lovely heaven, but still yon sunny sea heaves brightly, and remains rolled o'er the peak of the far Rhaetian hill, as day and night contending were, until nature reclaimed her order, gently flows the deep-dyed Brenta, where their hues instil the odorous purple of a new-born rose, which streams upon her stream, and glassed within it glows. 29. Filled with the face of heaven, which from afar comes down upon the waters, all its hues, from the rich sunset to the rising star, their magical variety diffuse, and now they change, a paler shadow strews its mantle o'er the mountains, parting day dies like the dolphin, whom each pang imbues with a new colour as it gasps away, the last still loveliest, till 'tis gone, and all is grey. 30. There is a tomb in Arqua, reared in air, pillared in their sarcophagus, repose the bones of Laura's lover. Here repair many familiar with his well-sung woes, the pilgrims of his genius. He arose to raise a language, and his land reclaim from the dull yoke of her barbaric foes. Watering the tree which bears his lady's name, with his melodious tears he gave himself to fame. 31. They keep his dust in Arqua where he died, the mountain village where his latter days went down the vale of years, and 'tis their pride, an honest pride, and let it be their praise, to offer to the passing stranger's gaze his mansion and his sepulchre, both plain and venerably simple, such as raise a feeling more accordant with his strain, than if a pyramid formed his monumental fane. 32. And the soft quiet hamlet where he dwelt is one of that complexion which seems made for those who their mortality have felt, and sought a refuge from their hopes decayed in the deep umbrage of a green hill's shade, which shows a distant prospect far away of busy cities, now in vain displayed, for they can lure no further, and the ray of a bright sun can make sufficient holiday. 33. Developing the mountains, leaves and flowers, and shining in the brawling brook, whereby, clear as its current, glide the sauntering hours with a calm languor, which, though to the eye heedless it seem, hath its morality. If from society we learn to live, 'tis solitude should teach us how to die. It hath no flatterers, vanity can give no hollow aid, alone man with his God must strive. 34. Or it may be with demons, who impair the strength of better thoughts, and seek their prey in melancholy bosoms, such as were of moody texture from their earliest day, and loved to dwell in darkness and dismay, deeming themselves predestined to a doom which is not of the pangs that pass away, making the sun like blood, the earth a tomb, the tomb a hell, and hell itself a murkier gloom. 35. Ferrara, in thy wide and grass-grown streets, whose symmetry was not for solitude, there seems as 'twere a curse upon the seats of former sovereigns, and the antique brood of Este, which for many an age made good its strength within thy walls, and was of yore patron or tyrant, as the changing mood of petty power impelled, of those who wore the wreath which Dante's brow alone had worn before. 36. And Tasso is their glory and their shame. Hark to his strain, and then survey his cell, and see how dearly earned Torquato's fame, and where Alfonso bade his poet dwell. The miserable despot could not quell the insulted mind he sought to quench, and blend with the surrounding maniacs in the hell where he had plunged it. Glory without end scattered the clouds away, and on that name attend. 37. The tears and praises of all time, while thine would rot in its oblivion, in the sink of worthless dust, which from thy boasted line is shaken into nothing. But the link thou formest in his fortunes bids us think of thy poor malice, naming thee with scorn. Alfonso, how thy ducal pageants shrink from thee, if in another station born, scarce fit to be the slave of him thou madest to mourn. 38. Thou, formed to eat and be despised and die, even as the beasts that perish, save that thou hadst a more splendid trough and wider sty. He, with a glory round his furrowed brow, which emanated then and dazzles now in face of all his foes, the Cruscan choir, and Boileau, whose rash envy could allow no strain which shamed his country's creaking lyre, that whetstone of the teeth, monotony in wire. 39. Peace to Torquato's injured shade! 'Twas his, in life and death, to be the mark where wrong aimed with their poisoned arrows, but to miss. O victor unsurpassed in modern song! Each year brings forth its millions, but how long the tide of generations shall roll on, and not the whole combined and countless throng compose a mind like thine, though all in one condensed their scattered rays, they would not form a sun. 40. Great as thou art, yet paralleled by those thy countrymen, before thee born to shine, the bards of hell and chivalry. First rose the Tuscan father's comedy divine; then not unequal to the Florentine, the southern Scot, the minstrel, who called forth a new creation with his magic line, and like the Ariosto of the north, sang lady love and war, romance and knightly worth. 41. The lightning rent from Ariosto's bust the iron crown of laurel's mimicked leaves, nor was the ominous element unjust, for the true laurel wreath which glory weaves is of the tree no bolt of thunder cleaves. Yet the false semblance but disgraced his brow. Yet still, if fondly superstition grieves, know that the lightning sanctifies below whate'er it strikes. Yon head is doubly sacred now. 42. Italia, O Italia, thou who hast the fatal gift of beauty, which became a funeral dower of present woes and past, on thy sweet brow is sorrow ploughed by shame, and annals graved in characters of flame. O God, that thou wert in thy nakedness less lovely or more powerful, and couldst claim thy right, and awe the robbers back, who press to shed thy blood and drink the tears of thy distress. 43. Then mightst thou more appall, or less desired, be homely and be peaceful, undeplored for thy destructive charms, then still untired would not be seen the armed torrents poured down the deep Alps, nor would the hostile horde of many nationed spoilers from the Po quaff blood and water, nor the stranger's sword be thy sad weapon of defence, and so, victor or vanquished, thou the slave of friend or foe. 44. Wandering in youth, I traced the path of him, the Roman friend of Rome's least mortal mind, the friend of Tully. As my bark did skim the bright blue waters with a fanning wind, came Megara before me, and behind Aegina lay, Piraeus on the right, Corinth on the left. I lay reclined along the prow, and saw all these unite in ruin, even as he had seen the desolate sight. 45. For time hath not rebuilt them, but upreared barbaric dwellings on their shattered site, which only make more mourned and more endeared the few last rays of their far scattered light, and the crushed relics of their vanished might. The Roman saw these tombs in his own age, these sepulchres of cities, which excite sad wonder, and his yet surviving page the moral lesson bears, drawn from such pilgrimage. 46. That page is now before me, and on mine his country's ruin added to the mass of perished states he mourned in their decline, and I in desolation. All that was of then destruction is, and now, alas, Rome, Rome imperial, bows her to the storm, in the same dust and blackness, and we pass the skeleton of her titanic form, wrecks of another world, whose ashes still are warm. 47. Yet, Italy, through every other land thy wrongs should ring, and shall, from side to side. Mother of arts, as once of arms, thy hand was then our guardian, and is still our guide. Parent of our religion, whom the wide nations have knelt to for the keys of heaven. Europe, repentant of her parricide, shall yet redeem thee, and, all backward driven, roll the barbarian tide, and sue to be forgiven. 48. But Arno wins us to the fair white walls, where the Etrurian Athens claims and keeps a softer feeling for her fairy halls. Girt by her theatre of hills, she reaps her corn and wine and oil, and plenty leaps to laughing life with her redundant horn. Along the banks where smiling Arno sweeps was modern luxury of commerce born, and buried learning rose, redeemed to a new morn. 49. There too the goddess loves in stone, and fills the air around with beauty. We inhale the ambrosial aspect, which, beheld, instills part of its immortality. The veil of heaven is half undrawn, within the pale we stand, and in that form and face behold what mind can make, when nature's self would fail. And to the fond idolaters of old, envy the innate flash which such a soul could mould. 50. We gaze and turn away, and know not where, dazzled and drunk with beauty, till the heart reels with its fullness. There, forever there, chained to the chariot of triumphal art, we stand as captives, and would not depart. Away, there need no words nor terms precise, the paltry jargon of the marble mart, where pedantry gulls folly, we have eyes. Blood, pulse, and breast confirm the Dardan shepherd's prize. 51. Appearedst thou not to Paris in this guise, or to more deeply blest Anchises, or, in all thy perfect goddess-ship, when lies before thee thy own vanquished lord of war? And gazing in thy face as toward a star, laid on thy lap, his eyes to thee upturn, feeding on thy sweet cheek, while thy lips are with lava kisses melting while they burn, showered on his eyelids, brow, and mouth, as from an urn. 52. Glowing and circumfused in speechless love, their full divinity inadequate that feeling to express or to improve, the gods become as mortals, and man's fate has moments like their brightest, but the weight of earth recoils upon us. Let it go. We can recall such visions, and create, from what has been, or might be, things which grow into thy statue's form, and look like gods below. 53. I leave to learned fingers and wise hands the artist and his ape to teach and tell how well his connoisseurship understands the graceful bend and the voluptuous swell. Let these describe the undescribable, I would not their vile breath should crisp the stream wherein that image shall forever dwell, the unruffled mirror of the loveliest dream that ever left the sky on the deep soul to beam. 54. In Santa Croce's holy precincts lie ashes which make it holier, dust which is e'en in itself an immortality, though there were nothing save the past, and this the particle of those sublimities which have relapsed to chaos. Here repose Angelo's, Alfieri's bones, and his, the starry Galileo, with his woes. Here Machiavelli's earth returned to whence it rose. 55. These are 4 minds which, like the elements, might furnish forth creation, Italy. Time, which hath wronged thee with 10,000 rents of thine imperial garment, shall deny, and hath denied, to every other sky, spirits which soar from ruin. Thy decay is still impregnate with divinity, which gilds it with revivifying ray, such as the great of yore, Canova is today. 56. But where repose the all Etruscan 3, Dante and Petrarch, and scarce less than they, the bard of prose, creative spirit, he of the 100 tales of love, where did they lay their bones, distinguished from our common clay in death as life? Are they resolved to dust, and have their country's marbles naught to say? Could not her quarries furnish forth one bust? Did they not to her breast their filial earth entrust? 57. Ungrateful Florence, Dante sleeps afar like Scipio, buried by the upbraiding shore. Thy factions, in their worse than civil war, proscribed the bard whose name for evermore their children's children would in vain adore, with the remorse of ages. And the crown, which Petrarch's laureate brow supremely wore, upon a far and foreign soil had grown, his life, his fame, his grave, though rifled, not thine own. 58. Boccaccio to his parent earth bequeathed his dust, and lies it not her great among, with many a sweet and solemn requiem breathed o'er him who formed the Tuscan siren tongue? That music in itself, whose sounds are song, the poetry of speech? No, even his tomb, uptorn o' the 4th, part 2. 99. There is a stern round tower of other days, firm as a fortress, with its fence of stone, such as an army's baffled strength delays, standing with half its battlements alone, and with 2,000 years of ivy grown, the garland of eternity, where wave the green leaves over all by time o'erthrown. What was this tower of strength? Within its cave, what treasure lay so locked, so hid? A woman's grave. 100. But who was she, the lady of the dead, tombed in a palace? Was she chaste and fair, worthy a king's, or more, a Roman's bed? What race of chiefs and heroes did she bear? What daughter of her beauties was the heir? How lived, how loved, how died she? Was she not so honoured, and conspicuously there, where meaner relics must not dare to rot, placed to commemorate a more than mortal lot? 101. Was she as those who love their lords, or they who love the lords of others? Such have been even in the olden time, Rome's annals say. Was she a matron of Cornelia's mien, or the light air of Egypt's graceful queen, profuse of joy? Or 'gainst it did she war, inveterate in virtue? Did she lean to the soft side of the heart, or wisely bar love from amongst her griefs, for such the affections are? 102. Perchance she died in youth? It may be, bowed with woes far heavier than the ponderous tomb that weighed upon her gentle dust, a cloud might gather o'er her beauty, and a gloom in her dark eye, prophetic of the doom heaven gives its favourites, early death, yet shed a sunset charm around her, and illume with hectic light the Hesperus of the dead, of her consuming cheek the autumnal leaf-like red. 103. Perchance she died in age, surviving all, charms, kindred, children, with the silver grey on her long tresses, which might yet recall, it may be, still a something of the day when they were braided, and her proud array and lovely form were envied, praised, and eyed by Rome. But whither would conjecture stray? Thus much alone we know, Metella died, the wealthiest Roman's wife. Behold his love or pride. 104. I know not why, but standing thus by thee, it seems as if I had thine inmate known, thou tomb, and other days come back on me with recollected music, though the tone is changed and solemn, like the cloudy groan of dying thunder on the distant wind. Yet could I seat me by this ivied stone till I had bodied forth the heated mind, forms from the floating wreck which ruin leaves behind. 105. And from the planks, far shattered o'er the rocks, built me a little bark of hope, once more to battle with the ocean and the shocks of the loud breakers, and the ceaseless roar which rushes on the solitary shore, where all lies founded that was ever dear. But could I gather from the wave-worn store enough for my rude boat, where should I steer? There woos no home, nor hope, nor life, save what is here. 106. Then let the winds howl on, their harmony shall henceforth be my music, and the night the sound shall temper with the owlet's cry, as I now hear them in the fading light dim o'er the bird of darkness's native sight, answer each other on the Palatine, with their large eyes, all glistening grey and bright, and sailing pinions. Upon such a shrine, what are our petty griefs? Let me not number mine. 107. Cypress and ivy, weed and wallflower grown matted and massed together, hillocks heaped on what were chambers, arch crushed, columns strown in fragments, choked up vaults, and frescoes steeped in subterranean damps, where the owl peeped, deeming it midnight. Temples, baths, or halls? Pronounce who can, for all that learning reaped from her research hath been, that these are walls. Behold the imperial mount, 'tis thus the mighty falls. 108. There is the moral of all human tales, 'tis but the same rehearsal of the past, first freedom, and then glory, when that fails, wealth, vice, corruption, barbarism at last. And history, with all her volumes vast, hath but one page, 'tis better written here, where gorgeous tyranny hath thus amassed all treasures, all delights, that eye or ear, heart, soul could seek, tongue ask. Away with words, draw near. 109. Admire, exult, despise, laugh, weep, for here there is such matter for all feeling. Man, thou pendulum betwixt a smile and tear, ages and realms are crowded in this span, this mountain, whose obliterated plan the pyramid of empires pinnacled, of glory's gewgaws shining in the van, till the sun's rays with added flame were filled. Where are its golden roofs? Where those who dared to build? 110. Tully was not so eloquent as thou, thou nameless column with the buried base. What are the laurels of the Caesar's brow? Crown me with ivy from his dwelling place. Whose arch or pillar meets me in the face? Titus or Trajan's? No, 'tis that of Time. Triumph, arch, pillar, all he doth displace, scoffing, and apostolic statues climb to crush the imperial urn, whose ashes slept sublime. 111. Buried in air, the deep blue sky of Rome, and looking to the stars, they had contained a spirit which with these would find a home, the last of those who o'er the whole earth reigned, the Roman globe, for after none sustained but yielded back his conquests, he was more than a mere Alexander, and unstained with household blood and wine, serenely wore his sovereign virtues. Still we Trajan's name adore. 112. Where is the rock of triumph, the high place where Rome embraced her heroes? Where the steep Tarpeian, fittest goal of treason's race, the promontory whence the traitor's leap cured all ambition? Did the conquerors heap their spoils here? Yes, and in yon field below 1,000 years of silenced factions sleep. The forum, where the immortal accents glow, and still the eloquent air breathes, burns with Cicero. 113. The field of freedom, faction, fame, and blood. Here a proud people's passions were exhaled, from the first hour of empire in the bud to that when further worlds to conquer failed. But long before had freedom's face been veiled, and anarchy assumed her attributes, till every lawless soldier who assailed trod on the trembling senate's slavish mutes, or raised the venal voice of baser prostitutes. 114. Then turn we to our latest tribune's name, From her 10,000 tyrants turn to thee, Redeemer of dark centuries of shame, the friend of Petrarch, hope of Italy, Rienzi, last of Romans, while the tree of freedom's withered trunk puts forth a leaf, even for thy tomb a garland let it be. The forum's champion and the people's chief, her new-born Numa thou, with reign, alas, too brief. 115. Egeria, sweet creation of some heart which found no mortal resting place so fair as thine ideal breast, whate'er thou art, or wert, a young Aurora of the air, the nympholepsy of some fond despair, or it might be a beauty of the earth, who found a more than common votary there too much adoring, whatsoe'er thy birth, thou wert a beautiful thought, and softly bodied forth. 116. The mosses of thy fountain still are sprinkled with thine Elysian water-drops, the face of thy cave-guarded spring, with years unwrinkled, reflects the meek-eyed genius of the place, whose green wild margin now no more erase art's works, nor must the delicate waters sleep, prisoned in marble, bubbling from the base of the cleft statue, with a gentle leap the rill runs o'er, and round, fern, flowers, and ivy creep. 117. Fantastically tangled, the green hills are clothed with early blossoms, through the grass the quick-eyed lizard rustles, and the bills of summer birds sing welcome as ye pass. Flowers fresh in hue, and many in their class, implore the pausing step, and with their dyes dance in the soft breeze in a fairy mass. The sweetness of the violet's deep blue eyes, kissed by the breath of heaven, seems coloured by its skies. 118. Here didst thou dwell, in this enchanted cover, Egeria, thy all-heavenly bosom beating for the far footsteps of thy mortal lover. The purple midnight veiled that mystic meeting with her most starry canopy, and seating thyself by thine adorer, what befell? This cave was surely shaped out for the greeting of an enamoured goddess, and the cell haunted by holy love, the earliest oracle. 119. And didst thou not, thy breast to his replying, blend a celestial with a human heart, and love, which dies as it was born, in sighing, share with immortal transports, could thine art make them indeed immortal, and impart the purity of heaven to earthly joys, expel the venom and not blunt the dart, the dull satiety which all destroys, and root from out the soul the deadly weed which cloys? 120. Alas, our young affections run to waste, or water but the desert, whence arise but weeds of dark luxuriance, tares of haste, rank at the core, though tempting to the eyes, flowers whose wild odours breathe but agonies, and trees whose gums are poison, such the plants which spring beneath her steps as passion flies o'er the world's wilderness, and vainly pants for some celestial fruit forbidden to our wants. 121. O love, no habitant of earth thou art, an unseen seraph, we believe in thee, a faith whose martyrs are the broken heart, but never yet hath seen, nor e'er shall see, the naked eye, thy form, as it should be. The mind hath made thee, as it peopled heaven, even with its own desiring fantasy, and to a thought such shape and image given, as haunts the unquenched soul, parched, wearied, wrung, and riven. Time's scythe and tyrant's rods shiver upon thee, sanctuary and home of art and piety, Pantheon, pride of Rome. 147. Relic of nobler days and noblest arts, despoiled yet perfect, with thy circle spreads a holiness appealing to all hearts, to art a model, and to him who treads Rome for the sake of ages, glory sheds her light through thy sole aperture. To those who worship, here are altars for their beads, and they who feel for genius may repose their eyes on honoured forms whose busts around them close. 148. There is a dungeon in whose dim drear light what do I gaze on? Nothing. Look again. Two forms are slowly shadowed on my sight, two insulated phantoms of the brain. It is not so. I see them full and plain, an old man and a female young and fair, fresh as a nursing mother, in whose vein the blood is nectar. But what doth she there, with her unmantled neck, and bosom white and bare? 149. Full swells the deep pure fountain of young life, where on the heart and from the heart we took our first and sweetest nurture, when the wife blessed into mother, in the innocent look, or even the piping cry of lips that brook no pain and small suspense, a joy perceives man knows not, when from out its cradled nook she sees her little bud put forth its leaves. What may the fruit be yet? I know not. Cain was Eve's. 150. But here youth offers to old age the food, the milk of his own gift. It is her sire, to whom she renders back the debt of blood born with her birth. No, he shall not expire, while in those warm and lovely veins the fire of health and holy feeling can provide great Nature's Nile, whose deep stream rises higher than Egypt's river. From that gentle side, drink, drink and live, old man. Heaven's realm holds no such tide. 151. The starry fable of the Milky Way has not thy story's purity, it is a constellation of a sweeter ray, and sacred Nature triumphs more in this reverse of her decree than in the abyss where sparkle distant worlds. O holiest nurse, no drop of that clear stream its way shall miss to thy sire's heart, replenishing its source with life as our freed souls rejoin the universe. 152. Turn to the mole which Hadrian reared on high, imperial mimic of old Egypt's piles, colossal copyist of deformity, whose travelled fantasy from the far Nile's enormous model doomed the artist's toils to build for giants, and for his vain earth, his shrunken ashes, raise this dome. How smiles the gazer's eye with philosophic mirth, to view the huge design which sprung from such a birth. 153. But lo, the dome, the vast and wondrous dome, to which Diana's marvel was a cell, Christ's mighty shrine above his martyr's tomb. I have beheld the Ephesians' miracle. Its columns strew the wilderness, and dwell the hyena and the jackal in their shade. I have beheld Sophia's bright roofs swell their glittering mass in the sun, and have surveyed its sanctuary the while the usurping Moslem prayed. 154. But thou, of temples old, or altars new, standest alone, with nothing like to thee, worthiest of God, the holy and the true, since Zion's desolation, when that he forsook his former city, what could be of earthly structures in his honour piled of a sublimer aspect? Majesty, power, glory, strength, and beauty, all are isled in this eternal ark of worship undefiled. 155. Enter. Its grandeur overwhelms thee not. And why? It is not lessened, but thy mind, expanded by the genius of the spot, has grown colossal, and can only find a fit abode wherein appear enshrined thy hopes of immortality, and thou shalt one day, if found worthy, so defined, see thy God face to face, as thou dost now his Holy of Holies, nor be blasted by his brow. 156. Thou movest, but increasing with advance, like climbing some great Alp which still doth rise, deceived by its gigantic elegance. Vastness which grows, but grows to harmonize, all musical in its immensities. Rich marbles, richer painting, shrines where flame the lamps of gold, and haughty dome which vies in air with earth's chief structures, though their frame sits on the firm set ground, and this the clouds must claim. 157. Thou seest not all, but piecemeal thou must break to separate contemplation the great whole. And as the ocean many bays will make, that ask the eye, so here condense thy soul to more immediate objects, and control thy thoughts until thy mind hath got by heart its eloquent proportions, and unroll in mighty graduations, part by part, the glory which at once upon thee did not dart. 158. Not by its fault, but thine, our outward sense is but of gradual grasp, and as it is that what we have of feeling most intense outstrips our faint expression, e'en so this outshining and o'erwhelming edifice fools our fond gaze, and greatest of the great defies at first our nature's littleness, till growing with its growth we thus dilate our spirits to the size of that they contemplate. 159. Then pause and be enlightened. There is more in such a survey than the sating gaze of wonder pleased, or awe which would adore the worship of the place, or the mere praise of art and its great masters, who could raise what former time nor skill nor thought could plan. The fountain of sublimity displays its depth, and thence may draw the mind of man its golden sands, and learn what great conceptions can. 160. Or turning to the Vatican, go see Laocoon's torture-dignifying pain, a father's love and mortal's agony with an immortal's patience blending, vain the struggle, vain against the coiling strain and gripe and deepening of the dragon's grasp, the old man's clench, the long envenomed chain rivets the living links, the enormous asp enforces pang on pang and stifles gasp on gasp. 161. Or view the lord of the unerring bow, the god of life and poesy and light, the sun in human limbs arrayed, and brow all radiant from his triumph in the fight. The shaft hath just been shot, the arrow bright with an immortal's vengeance, in his eye and nostril beautiful disdain, and might and majesty flash their full lightnings by, developing in that one glance the deity. 162. But in his delicate form, a dream of love, shaped by some solitary nymph whose breast longed for a deathless lover from above, and maddened in that vision, are expressed all that ideal beauty ever blessed the mind within its most unearthly mood, when each conception was a heavenly guest, a ray of immortality, and stood, star-like, around until they gathered to a god. 163. And if it be Prometheus stole from heaven the fire which we endure, it was repaid by him to whom the energy was given which this poetic marble hath arrayed with an eternal glory, which, if made by human hands, is not of human thought, and time himself hath hallowed it, nor laid one ringlet in the dust, nor hath it caught a tinge of years, but breathes the flame with which 'twas wrought. 164. But where is he, the pilgrim of my song, the being who upheld it through the past? Methinks he cometh late and tarries long. He is no more, these breathings are his last, his wanderings done, his visions ebbing fast, and he himself as nothing. If he was aught but a fantasy, and could be classed with forms which live and suffer, let that pass, his shadow fades away into destruction's mass. 165. Which gathers shadow, substance, life, and all that we inherit in its mortal shroud, and spreads the dim and universal pall, through which all things grow phantoms, and the cloud between us sinks and all which ever glowed, till glory's self is twilight, and displays a melancholy halo scarce allowed to hover on the verge of darkness, rays sadder than saddest night, for they distract the gaze. 166. And send us prying into the abyss, to gather what we shall be when the frame shall be resolved to something less than this, its wretched essence, and to dream of fame, and wipe the dust from off the idle